Okay, so perhaps when one new product from a brand reminds you of a competitor's older product, maybe that's not a good sign. That's exactly what you all thought about the new A3 Wood edition from Lian Li. Everyone thought it was like a derivative of the fractal design North. Perhaps it was like a slightly smaller North. I'm really hoping that's coming soon, but we were hoping for something slightly more different, and this whole wood edition is a bit of a disappointment for me personally. Perhaps it's just not different enough versus what already exists on the market, and the quality just feels off. You are paying a premium over the non-wood A3, a $15 premium just for this wood piece that feels mismatched, slightly misaligned. And we do have the curvature for the top panel that follows the plastic curvature and straight at the bottom. So that's all nice and dandy. But when it comes to feeling the wood and looking at the wood, it's just not as premium versus what you find with the cases like the North. Plus, they really missed the opportunity to add some color accents and some wood accents on the interior to really elevate the entire A3 value experience, you know? Come on! The other change from the original plastic solid panel is the inclusion of mesh in between the wood pieces. Many people were actually asking for mesh on the front, and Lian Li is clearly listening. I feel like the price difference works just because of how affordable the original case is. Like, would you splurge $15 more on the Woodalicious enclosure? I'm curious. Let me know in the comments. And interestingly, you can buy custom wood panels specifically designed for the Lian Li A3 from Etsy and from their own website, but they are insanely expensive. They cost more than the enclosure itself. So the fact that Lian Li is pumping out their own wood edition is going to satisfy many who want that little extra flair in their desk or living room, whatever. And you still have the option to potentially buy a really expensive custom wood panel as well, if you want. I absolutely love the size of the A3. It's the same length as my mid-tower, the Corsair 4000D, but it is way shorter. It's almost like an oversized ITX enclosure, but man, Lian Li was able to cram a micro ATX motherboard in there, a full-size ATX power supply, up to 10 120mm fans, CPU towers up to 165mm in height, and 4-slot graphics cards up to 415mm in length. So when they say compatibility is strong with this one, they freaking mean it. Really sucks though that the new D15 G2 is 3mm too tall just on paper, but given the mesh exterior and how slightly flexible it is, a tiny amount of contact between your CPU cooler and the side panel won't hurt it. Although with so many options for components, you do have to tread carefully on what fits and when it fits. For example, if you're installing any bottom fans, it will limit your GPU to 3-slot and 61mm in width. If you are installing anything on the side bracket for intake or exhaust, you have to be mindful of the power supply bracket and where it's located. And my D30 AIO fits no problem without interfering with my motherboard, but that's like the extent. You cannot go anything wider than 30mm fans, and so make sure that the radiator is also standard size. And interestingly, all the component fitment and compatibility revolves around your power supply. So which power supply you're choosing, ATX, SFX, or SFXL, and where it is going to be mounted, either at the front, on the side, or the rotated front mount. mATX with another insane value product, the Hyperflow ARGB AIOs, available in black or white, 240 or 360 sizes, with full platform compatibility and friendly tools along the way that not only look gorgeous with pump lighting and matching blade illumination, but also performance that should satisfy with any hot silicon thanks to high-speed fans, high-density fins on the rad, a good pump, and daisy-chain fans for easy cable management, all backed by the 6-year warranty, so you don't have to worry. Check it out below. Okay, so I will say I do like the ability to mount the power supply and the bracket from outside of the frame on both sides, and it's very easy procedure, just making sure that I align the holes, align the little 2 notches at the bottom that secures the power supply in place. So for example, in this position, I'm not a huge fan of how much the tubes are being folded, so I do have an opportunity to move the power supply bracket slightly down. In this configuration, we have a lot less tension built around the AIO tubes, and the power supply bracket now is in the lowest position possible without interfering with my RTX 3080, which is still a very hefty graphics card. The problem becomes cabling. So here I have my 8-pin cable plugged in already. It's routed behind the AIO, and there's no way this will reach my SFX power supply. That's not cool. And you don't have the option to potentially rotate the bracket with all the connectors facing the top. Like, this is not an option. It can fit, but the holes don't align. So in this configuration, yes, I could plug it in And you can still manage the cables so they don't hit the fans and the I/O, but actually mounting the bracket on the frame in reverse is not possible. Why? Now for the side power supply mount, I do appreciate the same height flexibility, but with my AIO at the top and my graphics card extending to this way, there is no position in where this power supply fits inside the frame. Like there's just no way. It interferes both with the AIO at the top and with the graphics card at the bottom. Not cool. It's also quite strange that they penalize you for using smaller power supplies, so SFX-L and SFX, because the power supply bracket, the main one that will support ATX power supplies, is still the same. So you kind of lose out all this additional space for potentially longer GPUs if you go with a smaller power supply. And that's a huge red flag, because look at all this additional space that could have been saved, and I find this power supply bracket way too bulky. It doesn't have to be this big. And it almost seems like you get rewarded for using the larger ATX power supply because of this bracket that fills the ATX dimensions. And also it's probably going to be better for cable management because the cables will actually reach where they need to go, because they have to come all the way from down here. And this is all because of the AIO setup. Removing this and just, let's say, having fans there removes this entire restriction, and you have the entire height flexibility. But AIOs for this form factor are insanely popular. Also interesting turn of events is that you can mount the ATX power supply sideways on this SSD bracket. So that can go at the front. And so instead of mounting two SSDs, you can mount the power supply with these little offsets so that the cable can pass through. And that makes no sense to me. Why would you prioritize giving us an option to mount an ATX power supply like that, with cables facing the motherboard, all that stuff, but not giving us the exact same option to mount the SFX or SFX-L power supply in the exact same configuration? So you can't actually mount an SFX power supply, like the holes don't align here, which I find really, really bizarre. What are you supposed to do? How are you supposed to mount an SFX-L power supply in this configuration? You can't, at least not with the default SFX to ATX adapter that comes with the A3, but most SFX and SFX power supplies come with their own adapters, right? So this Corsair power supply comes with its own ATX adapter, and it mounted perfectly fine. Right now, all the holes aligned, all my spacers are in here, and this way you can pass the cable. So you have to make sure to pass the cable before you insert the bracket. And yeah, this way the cables are facing the motherboard so you can actually route things. Nice. As for the assembly, everything is pretty seamless. I do wish the top panel was removable, just because if we are working with an AIO, there's so little room in this corner, for example, so routing your 8-pin and everything. And since we don't have any room behind the motherboard tray, everything has to cross in the motherboard, and like having just access to behind the radiator and the set of fans to like plug in the 4-pin, plug in the ARGB connector, for example, would be so much easier. And like we do have a removable side plate over here for your fans and radiator, for example. But man, I so wish that was reversed. Like if this was removable, it would have made this case so much more enjoyable to work with in the AIO configuration. But I will say it is so freaking cool to be able to mount one 40mm fan, so dual at the top and dual on the side, or a 280mm radiator instead of a 360, just to give you more options. Plus a full-size 120mm at the back is awesome. Cable management in this one is challenging, especially for me. I hate doing cables, and we don't have any space behind the motherboard tray, so all your cables have to be either stashed at the top and basically on the interior, so good luck with that. Strangely, this was the only power supply configuration that actually fit my cables with an SFX-L power supply, and the cables are so short, which is awesome for like an ITX machine where the cables and everything is so kind of tight together. But here, with the power supply facing down, the cables do not reach, and with the power supply on the other side facing down, it could reach with this GPU, but did not reach with my RTX 3080. So if anyone knows how to handle these cables, let me know in the comments. And also they're black, so they kind of blend in, but I'm sure this might be a nightmare for some configurations. We even have a vertical GPU support with a bracket that is sold separately, and it is color coded to either the black or the white. And it actually makes sense why we have this side power supply mount, because it allows for vertical GPUs to be installed, and even my 3080 would fit in this configuration. No problem, it's just wiring that card would be challenging. I really like the exterior mesh. It reveals your hardware and lighting at certain angles, but not always. And we also have an optional TG panel too. And a quick note, the left and right panels are interchangeable, like they fit into the mount, but they don't fully align with the frame. And we have this notch at the front. Wow, I do love the look of the glass. Perhaps not in this configuration, but still a cool option. So the A3, man, this thing is awesome. After passing the hurdle that was cable management, I absolutely love what this thing can deliver with 360, massive GPUs, ATX power supply, so many fans, and the DLCs are actually pretty decent. You know, the vertical GPU mount that displays your graphics card is awesome. The tempered glass side panel is, you know, color coded as well, which makes me think Lian Li is thinking about the potential user. The wood panel, easy swap on the original too, although I'm not sure if they're going to be selling the wood panel separately, so stay tuned to that, I guess. At 26 liters, it is smaller than the AP2 one, it is smaller than the A20 one, and it is probably the micro ATX case to beat right now. If I'm nitpicking though, I hate the IO cables and how they're so chunky and bulky and interferes with anything that you might install at the bottom. I hate the fact that the top panel is not removable, and despite how good the front panel may appear on camera and in real life, from a distance, when you're touching the wood, it's not refined. It is kind of sharp edges, and everyone looks at this and thinks it's a mini North. I think that's going to be the biggest problem with Lian Li, because they are trying to catch up to the wood trend, and American walnut is absolutely everywhere right now, but I would love to see a front panel of some kind and say, yep, that's the A3, and right now everyone thinks it's a fractal clone. Alright guys, I'm Dimitri. Let me know what you think of the new A3 wood from Lian Li, and I'll talk to you in the next video.